Okay, now let's move to our body paragraphs. And we have first, I'm looking for them immediately, preferably, to introduce the concept and maybe specify whether it's political, economic, cultural, social. So um, after that, we're going to get quoting the document, citing the author. We're looking to see how the quote illustrates the concept, and I want to see that twice. Okay, I want to see two quotes. That's going to get me to using the majority here, most likely, and it will in this case for this essay. So I want to see two quotes, and I want to see how they illustrate the concept. And then finally, I want to see, and this is the big piece here, is I want to see, and preferably in the last sentence, I want to see the author connect the concept to the thesis. So let's jump over to, let's move that over a little bit. And let's take a look at what we have here. Okay, remember in the thesis, she tells us that the U.S. went to war because they felt that they had to protect the justice of the Cubans. A little disconnected, but let's go with it. Let's see what she's got. In 1898, conditions in Cuba were very uncivilized and, as some Americans believed, dirty. Now, I prefer to see the concept introduced right here. I think that's an effective way to guide the reader and bring the reader along with the notion of justice. And as you see, I don't see it here. Let's go. The Cubans were also under control of the Spaniards, who tried to put them into the concentration camps to protect them, which actually ended up killing most, etc., etc. This is a nice piece of factual information, and it's good, but I still haven't found my concept. Now I see a quote, and it's from one of the documents that we'll take a look at. Okay, I still don't get to the concept of justice, which she promises us here until the very end. And she says they felt they needed to protect their justice, referring, of course, to the Cubans. And again, a little rough use of the rough use of the term here, protect their justice. But now I do get it. And again, I prefer to see that right up front to bring us to the notion of justice and let us know that this information is going to illustrate justice. So she mentions it here at the end. So we'll give her credit for putting it in there. Ideally, again, it's up front early so that we can see how the information in the documents illustrate it. Now let's go to the quote. From all this we deduct that the number of deaths among the reconcentrados has amounted to 77%. Well, let's look at the let's look at the quote. I'm using the great website Stanford History Education Group, and one of the documents is from Fitzhugh Lee, and you see it's spelled out here, and she has chosen to take from here. From all this we deduct. So this is the piece, this is the quote that we see, and it is, and she does connect it to the author, Fitzhugh Lee, and I like what she's done here, and we've talked about this, using a nice descriptive verb. Not only do you have to connect the author to the quote, but give me a nice descriptive verb that adds some color to the situation. And as you can see, Fitzhugh is reporting, this is his account back to Washington from Cuba. So it's a nice piece here that he's reported the information. Okay, so it's a nice quote, properly used. Let's double check. Let's go back to our rubric. Let's double check that the quote illustrates the concept. And I think we can, as we see, we deduct that the number of deaths among the camps has amounted to. So I think this certainly proves her point that these camps set up by the Spaniards have a negative impact, and the idea here is that the United States has gone to war to protect or to prevent further injustice in Cuba. Okay, so nice work with the quote there. Now she adds this piece about the white man's burden, which is fine, but it's not another quote. Again, I'm looking to see another quote. If we go back, if you look at the options that she had, preferably she goes to the speech by McKinley, McKinley's State of the Union. the grounds where he's explaining the grounds for intervention, and President McKinley makes it clear, first and foremost, that it is a cause of humanity to put an end to the barbarities, bloodshed, starvation. This is a nice quote, and it should appear here because it supports the notion of an injustice being committed in Cuba. Okay, so I would have liked to have seen that. It's not in there. She's going to lose points because there's only one quote. And then finally, back to our rubric here. Do we connect the concept to the thesis? And as we said earlier, this is it. She promises us to discuss justice. She does. And then she ties it back by saying they felt they needed to protect their justice. This works for me, and I'll give her credit for this piece. Of course, if I give her credit for that, I got to wonder, does... again, I would have liked to have seen, even if it's real similar, I would have liked to have seen her introduce the concept of justice here. But I have to give her credit here. She ties it all back together and says that the United States felt they needed to protect justice in Cuba. Okay, so there's one paragraph, and I'm going to do that again for all these body paragraphs. I'm going to look for a new concept, and I should anticipate that it's going to be here. Okay, let's do the second body paragraph. Let's do this a little quicker now, where she promises us a discussion about American stability being threatened. Stability is a concept that we talk about quite a bit. And before the U.S. declared war on the Spanish, it was shortly after the sinking of an important U.S. military ship, the Maine, by the Spanish. This destruction of a U.S. ship on purpose by a foreign empire could look like nothing but an attack to the American people and government. This is a nice connection. She talks about threats. Could look nothing but an attack. So she gets us to the concept right away. What she does, she does a nice job here. And as we mentioned earlier, we don't get it here, but we do. She does a nice piece with it here. Jumps right in with a quote from the Monroe Doctrine, which you see is here. Okay. So she's going to use a piece from the Monroe Doctrine, and she does a nice piece. According to the Monroe Doctrine, again, there's that nice use of the word that attaches the author or the document to the quote. In this case, we should see some quotes and maybe even an ellipsis in order to make that connection, because she is pulling it directly out of here, and I'm not finding it, but we know it's in the Monroe Doctrine, and she should close it. Maybe another ellipsis, but oops. But close up that quote for me. Nice use of the quote. Spain was seen as a threat, a small one, but a present one nonetheless. Connect that for me. And that's a nice use of her own, and put it in her own words. I like that. Her own voice. And she's telling me how the Monroe Doctrine is a threat to American stability. Now we get General Lee, when in Cuba, requested, and here's a nice quote, 2 warships, etc., etc. So I do have 2 quotes here, 2 nice connections, well done. And then finally, their stability was at risk, and they had to take action to keep it safe. Preferably, this I don't like. I'd rather she says American stability would have been better. American stability at risk. They had to take action to keep it safe. Connects her concept of stability to the notion that this was a reason why the U.S. went to war, and does a nice job with this paragraph.